Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Chai Break Podcast. This is your host, Shweta Ravishankar.
And Ramachari from New York City. This season, we're excited to interview a roster of amazing South Asian women who have broken barriers, questioned norms, and continue to make a mark for themselves.
They come to you from all over the globe, from Bangalore to New York, Melbourne, and everywhere in between. We hope you enjoy these conversations as much as we do and chime in along the way.
So let's get started.
Hello. Welcome to the Chai Break Podcast. Hi, Rama.
Hi, Shweta. How is your long weekend going?
It couldn't be more perfect. Sunny skies, picnics, and lots of quality time with the family.
Oh my God, that sounds so good, right? Yeah, we were blessed. The weather seems to be great. It's been such clear skies and no rain so far.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned something. You said it couldn't be more perfect. Like, have you ever wondered what defines something as perfect? Like, is this perfection?
So true, right? So true. Actually, no. But hey, you know what? We're exactly going to discuss that today. How somehow the word perfect rather, has become this ideal that we constantly strive for. Whether it's that perfect vacation, the perfect dress, the perfectly behaved children, and the list just goes on and on. I know we've all been guilty of it at some point, right?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm trying to tone down that word, using the word perfect for anything. Sometimes I do type it when somebody gives the response I need. I'm like, oh, perfect. But I'm like, is that really perfect? Do I need to be perfect? Do I need something around me to be perfect? So it can be quite exhausting. So having literally the word perfect can be quite exhausting, isn't it?
That is so true. That's so true. It makes life in itself feel like a race to reach that ideal, at every given point in time. And honestly, like we know, it's impossible, right?
Yeah. And, I think we're discussing this because we never stopped and paused and thought about, hey, are we abusing the word perfect? Like, what is perfection? Is perfection the know-all, end-all? So I think this is a great segue to discuss that. So excited about this episode.
Yeah, that's so true. Because as a generation, I feel like we're, setting ourselves up for failure in fact, by stressing over this perfectionism mindset.
Yeah.
And the discussion is also about what is perfectionism, what is failure, but also in the race for perfectionism, are we equipped enough to handle the failure that's to come, which is kind of inevitable, right?
Yeah, and more. And why is this perfection mentality just escalating, right? So we should talk all about this. So what is perfectionism, or really who is considered a perfectionist, right? Perfectionists, by definition, are people who strive for the best. They want to be the best. They want to ace their exams. They want to be just totally meticulous at their jobs. They want to raise perfect children. In fact, I jokingly say to people, if, we have all these personality tests, right? Carl Jung personality test, and we have the zodiac signs where Virgos are considered perfectionists. And, and I know you're a Virgo there with all the chuckle. I always think if I was the CEO of a corporation, I will be at least some of my top employees will be like those perfectionists. Because they do strive to be the best. And for an organization, that's actually good. Mm-hmm. But is it really good for them in the long run? So I think that's what we're here to discuss. So one might assume that this whole drive for the ideal just translates over, to their health. They should be just perfect with their bodies. They should be just the epitome of perfect mental well-being and physical well-being. But is that really true? Is that what's happening?
That's so rightly put, actually, because right off the bat, as a Virgo, as a perfectionist, I have lived over 30 years of my life striving for that perfectionist mentality. And I can tell you from experience, for the kind of person I am, the personality I have, it's brought me nothing but tons of stress, not living in the moment, Yeah. So let's just prefix this discussion by stating that perfection is a false construct that is conjured up by the society. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's not to say that you should not strive to be better. Of course, we have to. It's nice, right? Because, you take each day at a time and you try to get better at something, whatever that is you're doing.
Yeah.
But in trying to do so, if you're going to subject yourself to pressures of both pressure from yourself and others, this whole effort, starts becoming more negative, more forceful.
Mhm.
And in the process, kind of makes you feel less than ideal, because if you don't reach that, your ideal of perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
Or the society's ideal of perfectionism, because all of this is so ingrained in us, right? It's become part of our DNA almost.
Absolutely. And I think, as a physician, I know of lots of surgical colleagues, friends of mine, who I admire because they aim for perfection. Like there are professions where you have to have zero error, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, to err is human everywhere. There are no situation where errors will never happen. But aim for zero errors, like my surgical colleagues, pilots, people who fly us
Mm-hmm.
in those huge aircrafts. There are certain areas where they require that kind of perfectionism. But I think we've kind of taken it a little bit overboard where we require perfectionism in everything that we're doing around, right? Maybe the people around us, the friends we have, the houses we live in, the kind of career path that we're going to take, or even raising our kids. And I think we're going to talk about that as well. So it can sometimes become too hard on itself and also around us, where, when mistakes happen, perfectionists, I feel, are the ones that are not able to really, kind of see the other side easily because they're just not able to understand that such mistakes can happen.
That is so true, because I keep reading this thing about Virgos that, if you do a mistake, a Virgo will be like, wait, how did you even make this mistake?
Yeah.
And I'm totally guilty of that. And it takes that, shift in mindset, to be like, it's okay. It's okay for it to happen. Like I vividly remember, many, many a times when I had to like, when I'm starting being so hard on myself, I'm like, you know what? Hang on. It's fine. You dropped something, you spilled something, you did something wrong. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to add to all of this, in comes the modern day blessing and curse, social media.
Right. I mean,
Drum
Instagram,
roll,
TikTok,
right?
Facebook, it's just everything's visible, everything's transparent. And you're just seeing everybody's life and everybody's just putting their best self, their best moments, and all the highs, their new job, new baby, weddings, graduations,
all their
homes,
highs.
Everything.
Yeah. And it's, whether it's health, whether it's children, whether it's the new stuff you're buying, the whole unboxing online, with influencers.
Yeah.
And I remember this was like even like 4 years ago, like pre-pandemic, I was constantly living with this FOMO attitude. Again, something that's been conjured up in the social media space, which is fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And it can really be draining,
That is true.
because you start doing things so that you can capture it for social media.
Right. Can I make a confession just this morning? Because I woke up with this perfection mentality. I was like, I'm going to start this morning perfect. I usually have a morning decoction that I make. And I was sitting outside the patio, just hearing the birds chirping, clear skies, and it could not be more perfect. And then I walk in, just getting ready to prepare for our podcast, and one of my dogs just puked all over. And I had to like get off from that whole zone that I had to like starting to clean the puke. And then part of me was like, oh my God, how did this happen? How could he do this? I just had a perfect morning start. And I guess we're all, like you said, we're all guilty of that because I wanted to have that perfect little morning. So, well, who did it finally create issues for? Not for my dog. He's fine. He's just fluttering and running around. It was me.
Because you find it hard. We were talking about it, right? When you mentioned, because some days you're able to just shake it off.
Yeah.
Like, when Dia has a tantrum and then when she leaves to school, I'm able to just shake it off and still go on with my day.
Yeah.
But there are other times where it just gets to you, and like I was saying, like I find my mind split in half sometimes, one part of my brain like telling me, like, hey, you know what? It's fine. She's only 6 years old. It happens all the time. Just let it go. And this is other part of my brain, which is just like, fight or flight. It's just going into this like, no, like, how can this be okay? Right? You find it so hard to shake off that moment.
Yeah. I mean, the poor dog was having some messy stomach and he puked. It was so upsetting because it ruined my perfect, bird chirping morning. But, these are the things. That's why we're talking about this in the open. But your point about social media is absolutely right. I mean, it's one of the influences that's kind of driven this whole perfection mindset, I think, in a way. And, the whole fear of missing out, that attitude seems to be growing. And it's not the most healthiest attitude, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
I think we've all been, victims of that as well. And some of us are openly talking about it and trying to our best to get out of that thing. And like you have in Chai Break, right, Shweta? We always say your vibe, your tribe, right?
That is so true. That is so
So
true.
we're trying to spread the word. We're seeking people who are kind of, who think of the same kind of ideas as with the same ideology. And so social media can now be channeled for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes we can now talk about our weaknesses out in the open. And there are a lot of people out there who are actually doing that. And
Yeah,
I
who'll
think,
come forward. And I think like with influencers these days, that's
Mhm,
become a thing where, keeping it raw and real, just and making it seem like, hey, I might be an influencer with 1 million followers, but you know what? I
mhm,
also cry. I also have these moments,
mhm,
these low moments, these
mhm.
rejections, and making it seem like, yes, after all, at the end of the day, no matter what your persona is online, you are just a regular person.
Exactly, exactly. The fact that I'm actually talking about my dog puke this morning says that I've come way too far in this journey. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's important to seek out those people in real life and online. So instead of focusing on the fear of missing out attitude in social media as to like, oh my God, this person has done this person's having this trip, or this person's wearing this fancy clothes and always does something fun, the same
Hmm.
person may go home and just have an episode of a breakdown. Who knows? I
Yeah.
mean, we don't know the other side of these people. So instead of actually always seeking people who are at least, provide quote unquote living a perfect life, we should focus on those people who are actually speaking their minds, right?
Hmm.
People who
Hmm.
are talking about their highs at the same time talking about the lows. And that's
That's right.
what we call your vibe, your tribe in our chai breaks. Like Eckhart Tolle, the author of Power of Now, he says, realize
Hmm.
deeply that the present moment is all that you ever have. So make the now the primary focus of life. So instead of
Beautiful.
trying to aiming to be somebody who is living the life that you think is perfect, just don't have to go seeking that. Let's take a pause and let's just take a breath and let's be in the now.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
now is the perfect time.
I mean, I think this is the perfect time to kind of reflect again, say, perfect time. It's like so ingrained in our vocabulary. It's so hard.
We should do something about that word, right? Anytime you use perfect, I'm like, eh. And then anytime you use perfect, you can give a noise.
And that is so true. Because, I think as a new mom, I still remember, right? Because you're a first-time mom and you
Yeah.
want to be the perfect mom. So in the quest for that, I joined all these, breastfeeding groups because,
Yeah.
I wanted to be more equipped with, all the knowledge that's out there.
Yeah.
And I still remember, like, as I went back to work, back in the day,
Yeah.
maternity was just, I think I went back when Dia was like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
So I had to go back to work and start pumping at work.
Yeah.
And my body was just not cooperating. It did just better with feeding Dia directly. And that's just how it was.
Mhm.
And then in all of these groups, moms would like post pictures of how much milk they've pumped or how long they fed their children.
Mhm.
And I remember I went through this spiral time
Mhm.
where I was just being so hard on myself for not being able to provide. And, it was really, really bad. And I was ashamed of supplementing Dia.
Mhm.
And I see that even today because there are, some breastfeeding positive groups, which is great.
Mhm.
It's great if you can do it. And at the time, my best friend was also, a new mother. And I remember she had this, amazing, spotless, seamless journey of breastfeeding. And I remember constantly comparing myself to her and feeling less than, until I had to kind of come to terms that fed is best. And I think it took a long time for that. And I think I was so harsh, not only on myself, but like any time I remember, whether it was my mother-in-law, my mother, or even my husband would tell me, maybe she's hungry, I would get offended.
Yeah, no, I think motherhood is a perfect example by perfection. Most mothers aim for perfection because I think it comes in our maternal we're nurturing, it's maternal.
Yeah.
And I think it just comes in that very DNA of wanting to be that way.
Hmm.
But then that's where I think we also slip down a lot more. And that's where I think, we're seeing postpartum depression. We're
Hmm.
seeing, so many mental highs and lows with motherhood. And that's a lot because of the pressure we place on ourselves.
True.
And I think society, in a way, is also helping, aiding that pressure being
That
placed on us.
very true. Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And I've been through this journey. I'm sure many mothers out there are nodding their heads right now. And when they're listening to us speak about these things, but again, it is again, where do we stop? Where does this stop? It comes from within us. It comes from
Yeah.
within us saying, like, there's no such thing as perfection. Perfect is the best that you can do at any given moment.
That is so true. And in fact, this was exactly what I started telling my daughter when she was 3, because I caught myself, as you can see already, I used to use the word perfect so often. Like
Mhm.
anything she would draw, she would do it. Like, this is perfect, dear. This is perfect, that, perfect, this. And then I caught myself because she would get extremely, extremely frustrated. But
Mhm.
this is not perfect, Amma. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So I had to like completely change that around and, pivot it and said that, what, there is no such thing as perfection. Perfect is whatever you can, the best you can give at any given moment. That is your best.
Right.
Your best and someone else's best and their it's totally subjective and it's totally different.
And we're talking about this and we're trying, we're still doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing is we're conscious about this, we're aware about this. And I think that's a big first step in just like, hey, hold on, I'm getting into this perfection mindset. Just like stop, pause and realign and then move forward. I think that's what, like, for example, like your stories about Dia's, the breastfeeding issues. I've had similar stories, and it's not too long ago. I was trying to expose Ananya to every skill on the planet because, if she opened her mouth, and I took her to US Open when she was 4 years old and wanted her to watch tennis and then thought that will inspire her. So, you come back home and then she talks about tennis and then I'm going to put her in tennis lessons and she's going to be the next Serena Williams.
Yeah.
That is the kind of thinking. And the same thing happened. And I brought her all the stuff and she went for 2 lessons and then, she just flung her bat. That was the end of it. And same thing, piano lessons. I just wanted to expose her to everything. So if the moment she went and just dabbled around with the keyboard someone's house, I was like, oh my God, she's going to become the next Mozart. I'm going to do this and this for her, enroll in all the lessons. Yeah. Guess what? Yeah. It hasn't crossed, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Yeah. And the same thing with I've just joined her in fencing because she was interested in it. But, I think what happens is, I guess it was more me trying to get her to become a star, a classic, becoming somebody's great at something. She may just wanted to have fun. And I just kind of removed the fun. Yeah. I just pulled the fun out of her life by just putting her into all these things and making this a chore. And then she just lost interest in all of that. So perfectionism is and I was thinking I was being the perfect mother, exposing the child to everything so she can really be skilled in so many things. And less did I know that I was just removing the fun out of life, not being in the now. And so, so I think there's so much that we all have done. We still are doing, this morning episode being a great example, that we still have so much work to do in this regard.
Yeah.
And so,
and that's, as I think this is the perfect segue, right? Because now we talked about perfectionism and how it's not so ideal. But in all of this, what's the one constant? Failure.
That
right?
is true. Yeah.
Failure is a constant. And I feel like, especially in today's age, as we're raising kids and even us as we, grow older, failure is inevitable. And it's that change in mindset that is required. You need to equip yourself to deal with that. Right? Because if you work hard enough, like, success will come. But along the way, along the path to success, along that ladder, there are many, many dips and many, many falls. And if we don't, are not prepared for that, if we don't prepare our children for that, that is what, leads to all kinds of, whether it's mental health issues and, depression and anxiety and all of that.
So basically why we're talking about failure is because perfectionism and fear of failure go hand in hand. And because, the huge downsides of having that fear of failure, because you have this perfectionist mindset and there is fear of failure. So many steps will not be taken because of
Mm-hmm.
just this. So it always is a hold back, right? And so
Right.
that's why we're talking about the failure. And again, social media, how often do we share our failures freely without feeling, less about it? We
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of people on social media posting how successful they are, but how often do they talk about how things have not worked out for them?
Mm-hmm.
And yet they are trying to make things work. Because society needs to know that. Even our kids going to schools, even our kids, like, the college applications, every
Yeah.
year it's becoming even more rigorous. It
Mm-hmm.
almost looks like you have to go to the moon to get to some of these top colleges
Yeah.
to really, so it is creeping in our society everywhere, everywhere. People want to know how good and great you are. Why
Mm-hmm.
can't people know how terrible you are at something,
Yeah.
yet you're going at it? And why can't
Mm-hmm.
that be a story?
Exactly, no, because I feel like the persistence, the resilience,
Yeah.
the effort, those are the things that are truly deserve the praise and the celebration. Because I feel like even trying, right? Because when you talk about failure,
Yeah.
failure is such a great thing if you look at it this way, that you tried.
Yeah.
You fail means you tried. So what's worse? Not trying.
Yeah.
So equipping our youth, equipping ourselves, equipping our children to actually go for it fearlessly,
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
in the face of failure, knowing that, yes, you will fall, but
Mm-hmm.
you try anyways,
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't reach you don't get the top rank, you don't reach number one, as it's always like, looked at, it's okay. But you know
Mm-hmm.
what? You had fun along the way. Are you having fun along the way? I feel like all of these little elements that, reach you to that pinnacle of success
Mm-hmm.
is so important, and sometimes much more important than that success, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that moment of success is momentary. But
Mm-hmm.
what it took you to reach that, months and years of hard work, and how you worked through all of these emotions and all of these failures and moments where you think you wouldn't make it, and you still made it.
Right. And in my profession, this actually, I'm a pathologist. So my job is to diagnose patients' problems, like, mostly diagnosing cancers. And as pathologists, what we say is kind of the final go, because a lot of treatment relies on the report a pathologist provides.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a perfectionist mindset that happens in my profession, because we need to be perfect, because you don't want to give a wrong diagnosis that caters to wrong treatment, and
Mm-hmm.
that caters to a patient's life. It's being gone down in different directions.
Yeah.
So perfectionism is ingrained in my profession, but now we're slowly starting to see that to err is human.
Yeah.
That's what we are. We're all ultimately, although we're pathologists, we're still humans, and errors do happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're trying to actually gain this awareness through societies and stuff. And even in some of my work community societies, we're now going to have conferences based on the errors that have happened, and let people
Wow.
talk about it in the open. Like, what? I
Mm-hmm.
am this great XYZ pathologist, but I've also done this error
Yeah.
in my profession, because it is normal.
Yeah.
It has to be normalized. It has to be like, oh, okay, I guess you're human. You've done error.
Mm-hmm.
We all don't want to keep doing errors more, but
Mm-hmm.
be having room for zero error only leads to a downfall
Mm-hmm.
than
Yeah, to just
actual.
normalize all of this, right?
Yes,
In some
absolutely.
ways. Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to do that only because we live in this perfectionist mindset, just because of the profession we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's how fear of failure and perfection is tied together, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's been so much research that's been done, and people who strongly fear failure have a composite of two personality characteristics: a personality that is motivated less by the possibility of winning and gaining something of value,
Mm-hmm.
and more by their anxiety about the possibility of messing things up. And this is how the same personality traits that drive perfectionism can show up in low achievers and high achievers. So that I thought was very interesting, where perfectionism and fear of failure kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Because, I mean, as you know, I recently had my performance, right?
Yeah.
And, I've been preparing for this for what, 9 months almost?
Yeah.
And towards the end of it, even in my sleep, if someone wakes me up, I can just like do the whole piece. In spite of that, I want to say like 5 months, 6 months into practicing and, rehearsing, multiple times a week.
Yeah.
I went through this phase, and this is all again in my head because, as a dancer, I've been dancing since the age of 6, 7, and I've performed Bharatanatyam and Bollywood and, salsa and belly dancing. I've done many, many, many performances. And in spite of that, the fear that I had this time, all going on in my head was, oh my God, what'll happen, Shweta, if you completely forget all the choreography? You're going to bring such a bad name to the dance company, to yourself. You're going to be, what if, you just go on there and you completely like blank out? What's going to happen? So this situation that I had created in my own head, what if that happens? And I went through this and I would have sleepless nights over it for many, many days, many, many weeks, until one day I had this conversation with myself out loud. I'm like, okay, Shweta, what do you fear? Okay, that you're going to forget everything. But why would you forget? Because, this opportunity is the result of preparation and you are preparing every single day for it. So, I had to kind of talk myself out of it because it was kind of proving to be detrimental, where I would go into rehearsal and sometimes I would falter. And that would kind of further, cement the thought that, oh yeah, what I'm actually imagining I'm not imagining it. It can't happen. And, sure enough, on show day, everything went seamlessly. I did not forget. The show was well received. Everything was good.
Yeah, it was amazing from what the pictures I saw. So it was great. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? And then you look back, and you're like, oh my God, I put myself through so much. And that again, talking about all of, the fear of failure, right? You would have heard this at work. The workplace, the most common thing is, performing under pressure.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a very positive trait, and something everyone aspires to. Even in an interview, possibly, they could ask you that question. How do you perform under pressure?
Yeah.
But then, like, when I, just to play devil's advocate, like, but why do you have to perform under pressure? Like, if you are training yourself, if you're doing this something consistently, you're preparing. Right? Yeah. You prepare consistently in bite-sized, progressions every single day, whether it's that big deadline, whether it's that big presentation, performance, whatever that is, you will simply be more prepared.
Correct. Yeah.
And in spite of everything, say on show day, there was a technical glitch, something happened, we had to redo something, but that's okay. But that happened despite your preparation.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, and, like you and me were talking, it's funny, Rama and I had the exact same experience. I was just telling her before, as we were discussing this episode, that when I was in school, I used to do a lot of elocutions and debate competitions. And, if you're from India, Kendriya Vidyalaya is like a pretty prestigious educational institution. And I was slotted for my very first inter-school competition. And I go on there and there are like at least like 500 people, students and teachers and from all these students from different schools. And I was totally prepared.
Yeah.
I go on there and I say hello, introduce myself, and guess what happens next? I blank out.
Yeah.
I completely freeze. I blank out.
Happened to me too. I was in the same boat as you. Again, elocution competitions was easy breezy at school, but once I went to an inter-school and I completely just like babbled my way for 5 minutes and then left. It was crazy. But again, when you talk about fear of failure, Shweta, like you talked about working under pressure, do you know 90% of the fear of 90% of CEOs is they fear of failing in their jobs. People who are the top leadership positions, 90% of them, and this is all the research has shown this, that they fear in failing in their jobs. And this is just not from, this creeps from low all the way to the top levels of society, and something that we really need to address. And that's why let's talk about some ways to equip yourself for failure. Yeah. Because in day-to-day life, it is bound to happen, right? One of the ways, I think, like you said, like your dance competition, one of the things that you said was like you were looking at, oh, what if I miss this step? What if I'm going to fail? So instead of that, I think number one should be to visualize courage. Just visualize the opposite of what's going to happen. You put your preparation in, doing your bite-sized steps, and ultimately visualize that you're actually succeeding in whatever event that you're targeting.
Isn't that what manifestation is? We talk about it all the time, right?
Yeah, it's kind of related. One of the steps of manifestation is actually visualization, feeling, and, emoting that whole experience, how happy you're going to feel when your dance performance just comes through so beautifully, how happy you're going to feel when that public speaking event just happens so
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So just visualizing that creates this whole a cycle within that really propels one to remove that failure, which is that negative emotion that's being an obstacle towards success. So visualize courage. And, the other thing we talk about, and let me know if, you can add this too, the no shame policy, right?
Yeah.
Trying and failing is definitely seen as not cool.
Yeah.
Social media is a big example of that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's worse, not trying at all, because we're just very afraid of failing. So actually having that no shame policy. So anytime you have the fear of failure, just do the opposite thinking. It's like, I have no shame in this. I am going to I don't mind failing, but I'm going to try. So visualizing courage, having a no shame policy, and like you and I are doing right now, just if you have some failure, even if you're the CEO of a company, just have a coach. Talk to someone. Coaching is big. Have your mentor. They must have gone through the same issues as you have.
Yeah.
There are other peers surround you, and just open up a conversation. You'd be so surprised as to how many people come having a similar issues, and they're so thankful that you actually opened up a dialogue, a space for them to talk about it. So these are some of the things. Go ahead, Shweta.
And I think another, very favorite of ours is actually one of our mindfulness practices that we always, focus on is focusing on the present.
Correct.
The power of now, Why don't you start, I think one of the things that sometimes I do, especially leading up to the performance, was starting each day with a mantra, saying, own the unknown future through gratitude for the known present.
Right.
And then you watch your happiness rise. And as you enjoy what you have right in front of you, enjoy that practice, enjoy that repetition,
right.
As you get better and better at it, just enjoy the journey.
Right.
And eventually, the result will be exactly what you want.
Correct. Absolutely.
And even I have to add this, that even if it's not exactly what you wanted, you would have, at least you have that thing to look back and say, hey, you know what? I enjoyed this journey. It's not perfect, but still I enjoyed the journey and I did the best I could.
Absolutely. I think the idea is to just not bottling any of this up, just talking it out, right? In the open, questioning the fears. And ultimately, we can only control what we can control. And what we can control is the way we think about any situation. Yeah. So I think giving a lot of focus on what one can control. If you're going to focus on fear, then that's what's going to manifest. If you're going to focus on good, that's what's going to manifest. I think this is very simple. Quantum physics has taught us this, everywhere, every, modern day philosopher is talking about what you focus magnifies.
Yeah.
Where you put your energy magnifies. So you decide where you're going to put your energy. You're going to put your energy to fear of failure, or you're going to put your energy into success. And go ahead.
It just what you said just reminded me, because that's exactly what Joe Dispenza says, right? Your thoughts create your reality, and again, in that shift in perspective, here, I was just, I came across this fun way of looking at failure, right? What is fail? It's a simple first attempt in learning.
Yeah.
Right? And, when you talk about another word for failure is a mistake, right? What is a mistake? A missed take, right? I mean, these can sound silly or funny, but that's simply when you break it down, because failure is such a big word. Right. It can almost be threatening, and also failure is just a source of feedback for the current level you're in, for that moment. Again, it goes back to the moment, for that moment.
Right.
And nothing more than that, It's an opportunity for you to take on and get better at it.
Absolutely. And I think we're almost coming to the end of this. I just wanted to reiterate one more point in that. I think, embrace the gray, like you just said, the failure has been such a strong word. So, there's nothing like black and white thinking. The black and white thinking is what can lead to stress, right? Anxiety, and kind of lowers self-esteem, judging oneself on the attitude and effort. There's so much gray out there. And so embrace that gray, because life is always a spectrum. It is always like a nice little painting with different colors. It could have dark colors in it, could have light colors in it. It has every flavor, every color in it. Yeah. So it doesn't have to all be black and white. So just embrace the spectrum that life offers and embrace the gray that reduces less judgment and reduces less of that fear of failing, and also reduces the perfectionist attitude.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, this was a very beautiful, empowering, much needed conversation, I feel like.
Yeah, it was perfect for the See Perfect.
Yeah, I hope our listeners also enjoy this and can relate to it.
Correct. I have to really, really gauge how many times I say perfect and remove that word from my very thought. So that'll be my goal.
That is so true. Yeah. So thanks for listening to us. Thanks for tuning in each week. And for those of you who don't know, we now have a Facebook page, Chai Break Podcast.
Yay.
So you can check us out there, like, follow, share with your family and friends, and we love hearing from you as always.
Yes.
So until next episode,
take care.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Do continue to give us your valuable feedback via ratings, reviews, and hit the subscribe or follow button so you don't miss out on our new episodes.
Your support means the world to us. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at chai_break_podcast to get the scoop on our latest episodes dropping every Wednesday. You can also write to us at chaibreakpodcast@gmail.com.